Hello, this is Professor MCal once again. Very happy to be with you. Thank you for tuning into this presentation. This one is very special. Worked hard on this one. I hope you enjoy it. Before I start, I would like to give a shout out to my engineer and esteemed colleague, Masta Mook. That's MastaMook. He does an excellent podcast, Mookie's Tarot Zone. Check him out on YouTube. It's fantastic stuff. Very good dude. Okay, so we will begin talking today about the occult revival of the early 20th century. We're going to start around the 1880s. So we're going to actually start in the 19th century, and we're going to take you through to probably about the 1940s, or maybe even beyond that a little bit. Here we go. So, the occult and mystery religions in the late 19th century. So, we know that the mystery religions take us all the way back to ancient Egypt, Babylon, and beyond. They probably go back even to ancient Sumer with Enlil and Enki, which I'll talk about on another day. But we know that these teachings are as old as religion or maybe even humanity itself. We don't know. It's very, very old stuff. This is the wisdom that is the inheritance of humanity as a whole. Over the centuries, these teachings have appeared, they've disappeared, reappeared, depending on where you were, the social climate of the time, other factors, etc. There was a resurgence of this knowledge during the Renaissance in Italy and in Europe. Although working on this stuff publicly, talking about this stuff publicly, of course, was a big no-no. I want to also make clear that a lot of this information throughout history was very, very hard to get. And there were many times throughout history that if you talked about or disseminated this information, you would be in serious trouble, or you could even have been killed. So we are going to talk about today the people that made these teachings, made having these teachings today possible through very, very hard work, a lot of writing, and a lot of really enthralling acumen. The late 19th century saw a renewed interest in psychic abilities, witchcraft, magic, occult studies, spiritual expansion in many forms that had been lost since the Middle Ages, really, in Europe. We're going to start with Theosophy. Theosophy was a spiritual and religious doctrine and discipline developed by a woman, a very special lady named Madame Helena Blavatsky. I'm sure that many of you have at least a preliminary understanding of who she was. She was very special. She was an early writer, practitioner, and a world-renowned mystic, a psychic, a guru, who consolidated her teachings and many esoteric teachings from Tibet, Russia, Europe, the United States, all over the world into her writings that we're going to take a look at. Theosophy basically means divine wisdom, comes from the Greek theos, which means divinity, and Sophie, which is a wisdom. The Theosophical Society is still active today. They offer many spiritual development programs in yoga, mysticism, occultism, magic, etc. All of that kind of stuff. They are still around today, and they are not hard to find. You'll have to just go to www.theosophical.org. Their motto is, "There is no religion higher than truth." Very complex symbolism here. We have the Ankh in the middle of it's really the star of Saturn, the star of David. It is the male and the female divinities coming together, etc. and so forth. We have the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. Very, very interesting stuff. I recommend checking it out. So we'll talk about Blavatsky herself. Here's a picture of her. Theosophy is then the archaic wisdom religion, the esoteric doctrine once known in every ancient country having claims to civilization. This is very much true. I have found this to be Very precise throughout the years that I have studied these topics. Its doctrines, if seriously studied, call forth every hitherto dormant power for good in us, and also the perception of the true and the real as opposed to the false and the unreal. As such was her career in this field. Madame Blavatsky really kicked off this revival. She is influential on everybody we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about several people, many people who were instrumental in consolidating these teachings, putting them into comprehensive volumes, and disseminating this information over time. Many of the people that we're going to talk about, Blavatsky included, are indispensable to this field of study. The people that I'm going to talk about are as important to this field as, people like Einstein or Carl Sagan would be to physics or astrophysics, things like that. If you don't study these people, it will not be possible to get a full picture or a full grasp of the material. So we'll talk about her key writings. Here we have Isis Unveiled, which is her most well-known work, her most well-renowned. Maybe the best. If you are going to start reading Blavatsky, I recommend starting with Isis Unveiled. It is a master key to the mysteries of ancient and modern science and theology. So the point is to try to marry science and spiritual teachings or religion and find truth somewhere in the center, not pinning yourself all the way towards science in the right brain, not pushing yourself all the way into the left brain in the spiritual stuff, kind of marrying them and trying to get the hemispheres to meet in the middle. This volume puts forth the notion that all religious traditions in the world are descendant of a single source. This is the basis of New Age spirituality today. I look at it this way: every religion in the world, every spiritual system in the world is after the same thing, that is enlightenment, inner peace, etc. And there is a system for this. And Blavatsky tried to consolidate these teachings in Isis Unveiled. I think that all of the religions of the world are valuable and have truth to them. You might have to, do some digging to find that, as none of them, as we know them today, are totally pure. But I look at it as a broken mirror. There was a mirror that was once the whole of these teachings, and it was broken, shattered over time, and pieces of this mirror lay in the religions of the world today. The Secret Doctrine, the synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy. Again, the main point of her work. This book deals with spiritual science and cosmogony of the ages. Cosmogony is the study of the origin of the universe. According to her, all of this was essential to civilizations before the modern era. It is equally as important today. Blavatsky also outlines the 7 root races of the human species. This is very, very interesting stuff. She was not a eugenicist, although some of her ideas were hijacked for nefarious purposes over the centuries, although I cannot point to Blavatsky herself as being the progenitor of any negative connotation of these teachings whatsoever. So that's a little bit about Blavatsky. She's very, very important, and we're only spending a few minutes on her here. If you wish to dig deeper, you will find just a wealth of knowledge. If you are not versed in this stuff at all, I would suggest starting with her, starting with Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine. Next, we're going to talk about another man from around the same time period. So Blavatsky was already a mature woman by the time Samuel would have been born, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, who was a British occultist responsible for many essential translations of occult texts in his life. 2 of the most notable are The Key of Solomon the King, that's Solomon's Magic, both the lesser key, which is the Goetia of the Lemegeton, which we've talked about, which is for evoking demons, and the greater key, which is for invoking angels. I talked about this quite a bit in some previous presentations. Please see the presentation on the black cube of Saturn for some more information on this text. Today we have this book of Solomon's Magic pretty much solely because Mathers made the translations. If he had not translated the text, it's highly unlikely that we would have it still today, or that you would be able to go on Amazon and buy it and find it. It would not be as widely distributed without him. He is essential to this field of study. Not many people know who he is. He is certainly not a household name. He was a contemporary of the rock star, Aleister Crowley, who we're going to talk about later. He was a member of the Golden Dawn, which is a magical society that deals with and performs King Solomon's magic or other magical operations. He was a key member of this group, as was Crowley. They both made huge strides in this group. Towards the end, they had disagreements, etc., and so forth. But they did work together for a time, and together were very, very, very powerful. He is the founder of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is an offshoot of the Golden Dawn, meaning he wrote the charter of that group amongst his many other tremendous translations. Moving on to the Sacred Holy Magic of Abramelin the Mage. This book is a key translation by Mathers. This is an instruction manual for summoning one's holy guardian angel to physical appearance. Now, this book is very old. The ritual was supposed to take 1 year originally. 1 year. Mathers consolidated this into a 6-month program. You can find this book as well, Amazon, anywhere, anywhere these kinds of books are sold online, you will find this. Aleister Crowley famously attempted this ritual in Boleskine, Scotland, in Boleskine House. He did the year-long version. Some people say that he never completed the ritual and left it open-ended, which left him open to susceptibility to demonic forces, which very well could be true, but we really don't know. Crowley could have successfully finished it, and we don't really know. But he is the only person that I have ever heard of that has attempted this. In the beginning of the book, there is a disclaimer that says no person should ever attempt this ritual for any reason. Which is a red rag to a bull with Crowley. We'll talk more about his descent into this later in this presentation. So these are key translations that I noted by Mathers, Key of Solomon the King, a very, very important book. If you're going to study magic, you have to have it. It would be like trying to study physics and not reading Einstein. The Book of Abramelin the Mage, another key translation, and then we have the Lesser Key of Solomon for evoking demons. This version here is translated by Mathers, which is it's a tremendous feat, because not only do you have to translate the literary component, you have to reconstruct the sigils properly so that they work, which he did with many. Many of the translations that he was working with were incomplete or were damaged by time, and he had to reconstruct these on his own. This copy of the Goetia has a foreword by Aleister Crowley, so it's really the best of both worlds. You really get a wallop from both of them. And this one, the Goetia is a very slippery slope. It is black magic. The Lemegeton is a black magic book, and if you're a black magician, good luck to you. We're going to move on to another person who is equally as important as Samuel Mathers, who is, again, not a household name, but an indispensable intellect to these teachings. Dion Fortune, one of my favorites. She lived from 1890, again, born 10 years after Blavatsky was in full swing. She was many things in her life. She was a occultist, a magician. She was a philosopher, a psychologist, a trance medium, priestess, a writer. She's one of the most luminous and significant figures in 20th century esoteric thought. It's a shame that people don't know who she is, because she is equally as important as Crowley and Mathers, in my opinion, although much lesser known. She was extremely prolific. I really encourage anyone interested in these topics to investigate her work. Some of the information that you're seeing on the screen comes from this source down here at the bottom. Check it out if you'd like. There's more information to be found there. These are a few, just a few of the works of Dion Fortune. If you look up her bibliography, you will find a tremendous wealth of knowledge. Anybody that's ever tried or has succeeded in writing a book will know that writing a book is extremely hard to do, and any kind of book, reference, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is. She was prolific at this, and I just can only imagine the tremendous amount of work that went into writing these books. The Mystical Kabbalah is one of the best volumes on Kabbalah that I've ever read. If you're interested in Kabbalah, this will be an invaluable volume to your collection, or if you are a newcomer, this is a great place to start. It is exceedingly complex. It is a hard read, but anything dealing with the Kabbalah is going to be a difficult and complex read. One of my favorites, The Training and Work of an Initiate into the Esoteric Sciences, into the Occult. It's all here. How to train yourself. The work that you need to do to get to where you need to be to make strides in the field, or strides in your personal spiritual development. Esoteric Orders in Their Work is also an excellent volume about many of the secret societies that you have heard about, that you know about, and many that you have never heard of. It's all here. I recommend any of these works to you if you're interested in this subject. Like I said, this is only the tip of the iceberg as far as her work. She has a significant number of works available. Here she is as a young lady. Moving on to Manly P. Hall. If there are any Freemasons listening to this, you will absolutely know who Manly P. Hall is. Another indispensable, enthralling intellect on the subject. Manly P. Hall, another prolific writer. All of these people are prolific writers. He was a writer on esoteric science, occultism, philosophy, as well, Freemasonry. If you go into any Freemasonic library, you're going to find works by Manly P. Hall. The quality and importance of his work cannot be overstated. He's been widely recognized as a leading scholar in religion, mythology, mysticism, the occult. He is respected by those in philosophy, theosophy, and psychology circles, including by Carl Jung, whom, when writing Psychology and Alchemy, had borrowed material from Manly P. Hall's private collection. This man was another astounding intellect, indispensable to this field. The website you are seeing linked to here is a comprehensive site that keeps records of his life and works. Check it out. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of work here. I mean, we are only scratching the surface here on the most important works, what I think are the most important works, but there's so much there. A quote from Manly P. Hall. Symbolism is the language of the mysteries. So true. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate to each other those thoughts which transcend the limitations of language. He's a brilliant man. Check him out. We have some of his key works here. The number one work by him, if you're going to read him, if you don't know about him, you need to start with The Secret Teachings of All Ages. This is on my bookshelf for sure. This book is a key to greater and deeper information that you will find, but you need to get yourself a preliminary understanding of this stuff. He's also working in the same way as Blavatsky. He's talking about the secret teachings of all ages, whereas Blavatsky was talking about essentially the same thing, the divine wisdom that is the inheritance of the human race, the human species. He has a comprehensive volume of lectures that he does on ancient philosophy, the great Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, etc. and also a treatise on esoteric ethics, magical ethics as well. So if you are a practicing magician or you are going to start practicing, I strongly recommend reading this book before you go any further. It will help you make some decisions on where you want to go, what you want to do, and what your intentions are with it. Israel Regardi, ritual magician, student of Crowley. I think he was actually the secretary for Crowley for a while. Born in England in 1907, immigrated to the United States with his family at 13. He was a follower of Blavatsky, provided him an entrance into the occult. And then through the writing of Charles Stansfield Jones, he became more aware of the occult traditions. And then fascinated by Crowley's outlook and exploits as well. He started out as a secretary for Crowley, as I said. Charles Stansfield Jones is another occultist you should look into. We're not going to touch on him here. There are a few people that I'm going to give honorable mentions to or shout outs. Charles Stansfield Jones is one of them. Again, we have a link at the bottom of the page. This is from this portion here is from encyclopedia.com straight up. Go there for more information. We have some of his key works here. Foundations of Practical Magic. Again, you have the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, and the Sephirot. In the middle there of the two pillars, the two Masonic pillars, of course, of Jachin and Boaz, that we all know and love. You might remember the two pillars of Jachin and Boaz being destroyed on 9/11. Complete system of Golden Dawn magic. Again, the Golden Dawn magical system really is the gold standard of magical societies. The Golden Dawn has it all. There are other magical societies that are very adept at this stuff, but the Golden Dawn is really the cream of the crop. It's like the Harvard of magical societies. And also a book about the middle pillar. If you're familiar with the two pillars of Jachin and Boaz, there is also a hidden secret pillar in the middle. The middle pillar, there is an entire volume on just this subject written by him. If you're interested, check it out. This book, The Middle Pillar, is not a book for beginners. This is a book for experienced Masons or occultists or people that are dealing with this subject matter. This is not a volume that you're going to want to start with. If you feel adventurous, try your hand, though. Check it out. So we're going to move on now to Alice Bailey. I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time on Alice Bailey because her output was so prolific. Again, not a household name. However, her writings can be found in New York City at the UN building in the library across from the United Nations chamber where they meet. Alice Bailey was another highly prolific occultist and writer. She was involved in the seance culture of the era. In the era of the late 19-teens, 1920s, there was a revival in interest in summoning spirits, summoning angels, demons, etc. You'd go to your friends' houses on the weekends. You guys would use a Ouija board, or you would use a dowsing rod or a dowsing pendulum to communicate with spirits, ask the spirits questions, etc., and so forth. Her written work is largely made up of translations that she alleged that she received telepathically from an entity known as the Tibetan. So the bulk of her written work is not actually credited to her. It's credited to this entity, the Tibetan. We're going to take a little bit of a look at Alice Bailey's bibliography. I have her full bibliography here. What we're looking at here are the books that are credited to the Tibetan. Initiation, Human and Solar is tremendous. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. These are not all of them. We're going to move on to another slide to get the full bibliography. You can pause here if you'd like and look up any one of these. I mean, these are all tremendous works. Some of them are very long. I mean, we're talking, some of them are almost as thick as a phone book. I mean, this stuff here is just... I don't know what kind of person you have to be to get into this level of of writing. It's just it's genius level stuff. It really is. This is her bibliography continued. One that I really like and I think is extremely important is the externalization of the hierarchy. If you don't know who she is, you can start here. She talks about how the esoteric sciences are going to be revealed by the powers that be, in the hearts of man and woman in the world. If you read it, it is incredibly accurate to what is going on today, the externalization of the hierarchy that we are going to talk a little bit more about that subject and how this is actually being unfolded now. We're seeing a revival now, again, in occult studies in the early 21st century. One of the primary reasons that this knowledge was buried after the revival in the early 20th century was because of World War I, of course, and then World War II. A resurgence of this information, this knowledge, kind of came about, I think, in the early 2000s with the advent of, or the not the advent, but the prevalence of the internet, YouTube, etc., and so forth. You can YouTube her up; she's all over it. Okay, these works are credited to Alice Bailey alone. She claims sole authorship here. All right. Consciousness of the Atom is tremendous. There is one volume that is combined authorship. The Light of the Soul, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is another ancient text that she makes has a commentary on. This was written by her and her teacher combined. Alice Bailey also founded a society called Lucis Trust that is still around today. Its headquarters is in New York City. Again, they are not unlike the Theosophic Society. They are trying to hold true and disseminate these teachings. Also, what they have termed as world goodwill. I have found Lucis Trust to be an interesting entity with some very valuable information and people behind it, although it is quite literally saying Lucis Trust is saying trust in Lucifer or the light of Lucifer, which we can talk about another day. Okay, and then the rock star, of course, Aleister Crowley, the infamous. Before we get into Crowley, who is the last person that we're going to talk about here, I want to give a shout out to a guy named Arthur Edward Waite, who was another prolific writer. His key work is called The Book of Black Magic, which is a composite of many ancient texts. I have a volume right here that I am kind of thumbing through. Chapter 1 is the antiquity of magical rituals, the importance of ceremonial magic, transcendental magic. Chapter 4 is the rituals of black magic. He talks about the Grimoirium Vernum, true black magic, the Grand Grimoire, the Grimoire of Honorius, which is another ancient black magic grimoire or text. The hard stuff is in the Grimoirium Vernum and the Grimoire of Honorius. And this goes on and on, the initial rites and ceremonies, the mysteries of Goetic theurgy according to the lesser key of Solomon the King. So there's commentary here on the Lemegeton and the Goetia of the Lemegeton again. In this book, it also teaches you how to do many fascinating things like making yourself invisible by means of a ring or by other means. One of the other rituals in the book starts with the practitioner having to procure a head, a severed human head. And the ritual goes something like you place beans, special beans in the eyes, in the ears, in the mouth. You bury it certain time, certain place, certain depth. And then you're supposed to show up for 3 days and water it with brandy. And there's an invocation you say over that. And I think on the third or fourth day when you show up, there's supposed to be a spirit there that will give you the rest of the secrets to the keys of invisibility. This does not mean literally invisible, of course. It could mean that it puts you in a situation where you can do something without being seen. It doesn't have to be taken literal, right? So we're going to talk about Crowley now. Everybody's favorite, of course. Okay, he is the rock star of the group. Aleister Crowley was also an extremely prolific writer in his own right. You can look up his full bibliography in your own time. It is just tremendous. Mostly referential works that he wrote on magic, Kabbalah, the tarot, etc. Crowley's knowledge of all this was such that he would look at the tarot and say, hey, you know, I think that the tarot is pretty good, but I can make it better. And he would make a couple of key changes or inversions to the deck. He actually created his own deck with all of his own images that were commissioned. There is actually an Aleister Crowley tarot deck. The Book of Thoth by Aleister Crowley is a manual to how to use his version of the tarot. Aleister Crowley also did many commentaries. We saw one on the Goetia of the Megaton, and also in his Goetia that he collaborated with Mathers on, there are some key changes made by him according to what he thought would make it more effective. Again, his knowledge of this stuff was such that, you know, he took it upon himself to make changes to some of these ancient systems. Pretty gutsy, if you ask me. Crowley is by far and away the most known, talked about, and celebrated figure of the occult today, above all of the other people that we have seen. So we'll talk about his life and achievements. Crowley was dedicated to the occult, magic, and writing. He was freed from having to work or having any real responsibilities besides working on magic and, you know, being a drug addict, sex addict, performing sexual magic, developing sexual magic, founding his own religion, Thelema, which is still practiced today in people that are interested in the occult, and by many people that are in government, that run megacorps, that run all of the major television channels, news channels, Hollywood, etc., all of that. Many of you know this stuff already. Some of you don't. If you don't, you can see my previous lectures, or you can do your own research and find out for yourself. There could be an entire presentation on him, and it still would not cover every little thing about his extraordinary life. I probably will do a presentation just about him in the future. He defined, maybe not created, but certainly defined sexual magic and brought the teachings of sex magic into comprehensive volumes and magical programs and rituals. Again, he created his own religion called Thelema, which is exceedingly complex, based on his teachings and other ancient esoteric teachings that he consolidated and actually founded. Took the time to found a religion that's practiced today. He also founded the Ordo Templi Orientis, a key magical society that still exists today. The OTO is really made up of followers of Crowley and people that practice his brand of sexual magic. Crowley has been known as a gray magician, both a white magician, black magician, somewhere in the middle. Not entirely a black magician, although some of the stuff that he did in his life was certainly motivated by nefarious intent, dark stuff, and the blackness of, you know, the dark side. This has been set forth most notably by the amazing occult scholar Mark Passio. I do not know Mark personally, but if Mark, if you ever hear this, I got to tell you, man, your work is just tremendous. I recommend any of Mark Passio's teachings to anybody interested in these subjects. I would say that Mark is today a leading scholar of all of this stuff, and I hope on a long enough timeline, Mark, that you will settle into this pantheon of great occultists. I truly believe that you'll deserve this. Crowley mastered the occult arts and was an expert in ceremonial magic. He was also a twisted person, a twisted individual who used many drugs from LSD to heroin, cocaine, to assist him with his magic, which is very dangerous. Later in his life, drugs overtook him. Crowley was also extremely promiscuous. He had sexual relations with both men and women, maybe other things. I really don't know. You'll have to look into his life and find out more about him. He was really pushing the limits of what was acceptable, of what you could do, what you couldn't do. I mean, this man was a pioneer, straight up. Doesn't make him a good person. Makes him a pioneer. Being a good person and being a pioneer don't have to be mutually exclusive. But in his case, it would be pretty hard to marry the two. I've never heard anybody say that Aleister Crowley was a good person, because he wasn't. He was, he was married. He had a child. The child died of typhoid. His wife later went insane from some of the rituals that they conducted together. Now, Aleister Crowley famously went to the Great Pyramid on his honeymoon, went into the Great Pyramid on his honeymoon, him and his wife. Inside of the Great Pyramid, he did the preliminary invocation of the Goetia that you can hear in a documentary called Masters of Darkness. Aleister Crowley, you can hear it. You can hear it there. He was inside the Great Pyramid when he did this, and he was supposedly contacted by his guardian angel named Aiwass that commanded him to write the Book of the Law, which would be the book of the new Aeon. And he would say that it would be the Bible of the new Aeon. I don't agree with that personally. He felt this way. There are people that do feel that way. Many of them are the people that make your laws. Amongst his work, there is a four-part treatise that, when read in linear conjunction, form a four-part complete course in magic. I'm going to say that again. A four-part complete course in magic. These are the Book of the Law, the Book of Lies, my favorite, Magic in Theory and Practice, excellent volume, and Book 4, Magic. Now, you could read any one of these individually is fine, but altogether they make up a complete course in magic. I mean, these are essentially magical textbooks, especially Magic in Theory and Practice and Book 4 Magic. If you are a preliminary learner, or if you're new to this stuff and you're interested in Crowley and want to read Crowley, many of his works are extremely hard to read, and you really have to have a lot of referential knowledge to understand. 777 and other Kabbalistic writings is an example of this. Is an extremely hard book. Do not start with that book. It's mostly charts. If you do not know how to read them, you will not know what you're looking at all. I suggest starting with Book 4. Book 4 is a easily digestible, comprehensive volume that is reasonably short, that will give you some insight into a couple of things. The first portion of the book is a set of lectures on yoga. And the second part of the book is a set of lectures and how-tos on magic, how to build an altar, how to build a magical circle, what you need to perform magic, etc., and so forth. How to create a magic wand, all of that kind of stuff is in there. If you're going to start on Crowley and you're new to him, start with Book 4. Aleister Crowley is without a doubt one of the most important people, of the 20th century that we never really hear about. He's far from a household name. That could change because his followers still exist today, many of which are in high places. Governments of many different countries have people that worship him and follow his teachings. If you don't believe me, you can go see the brand new TV series on the mainstream cable network CBS about Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist, and his teacher, none other than Aleister Crowley. The people that own the media, all the megacorps and who are high up in the political spectrum, love Crowley and promote him as a hero. This is part of what I was talking about earlier in the Alice Bailey portion. This is part of the externalization of the hierarchy. In the 21st century, we are entering a pagan era. That does not mean that the religious texts of the past are not valuable anymore. Quite the opposite. If a book has existed for 2,000 years, like the Bible, the Quran, or the even older than that, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, you should do yourself a favor and, I don't know, maybe try to read it. There's a reason it's been around for millennia. At least that's my advice. I will continue to explain about Crowley and his life and his teachings in another presentation. That is all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I enjoyed giving this presentation. I probably will do a follow-up on Crowley at some point. I do have some ideas about some presentations that are going to be coming in the future. I think my next one is going to be about who is Jesus, to kind of balance out the esoteric and occult spectrum and dig into the depth of the person, or let's put it this way, the man, the myth, and the legend. So please look out for that one. If you enjoyed this one, please leave me a comment or subscribe to the channel. It really helps me when you do that. Thank you very, very much for listening. Again, any comments, please leave them. Any suggestions, I'm very much open to. Let me know how I'm doing. I have tried to make this one as comprehensive and understandable for any person, a newcomer or an expert, somebody that has been doing this for a long time. I hope you find this information to be valuable. Thank you, and God bless you. Happy trails. Be well.